Hi students, good morning to everybody. Once again, I want to continue the lesson that is body fluids and circulation. Today's topic is about the origin and conduction of heartbeat. What are the sequential events or the electrical events that occur during the conduction of impulses? Now we have the heart is formed of right atrium, left atrium, and also we have right and left ventricles. Now this is the left atrium, and this is the left ventricle, and this is the right ventricle, and this one what we have the right auricle, right atrium. Now the human heart is myogenic. Myogenic. Generally, in all vertebrates, the heart is myogenic. What is myogenic? The myogenic heart is the one which has the ability of generating its own impulses. That is what is called the heartbeat, the rhythmicity. All the vertebrate heart is myogenic, and also the mollusk. In the case of mollusk, also the heartbeat originates within the heart itself. Origin within the heart itself, such a heart where the heartbeat is initiated by the cardiac muscles itself is called what is known as myogenic heart, or the vertebrates and mollusks. In other animals, for example, you see the arthropods, or in the case of echinoderms, the heart is described as neurogenic. The heartbeat is stimulated. The heartbeat is stimulated by the nervous system. Such a heart is called neurogenic heart. Arthropods, the best example, the insects. When the brain is removed, the heartbeat stops. But in the case of myogenic heart, even human being under coma stage, it can just normally beat the heart. So the heartbeat is taking place, the heart is working because the heartbeat is myogenic. So the cardiomyocytes we can discuss. They can produce rhythmic, spontaneous depolarization that can initiate the contractions. Such a heart is called myogenic heart. A heart that can produce spontaneous rhythmic depolarization that initiate contractions is called what is known as myogenic heart. What is depolarization? If you're taking, for example, a nerve cell or any membrane, suppose I'm taking the nerve cell, the axon. We'll discuss in detail later how. So this is a membrane, outer membrane of the cell, inside which we have the cytoplasm. The membrane is having charges. Normal conditions, it is having positive charge outside and negative charge inside. Likewise, I am taking just a nerve cell axon, inside which we have the exoplasm, otherwise called the cytoplasm. Now this is called a normal membrane, polarized membrane. Once a stimulus is given at a particular point, we have a process what is called depolarization. What is depolarization? Now the inner charge becomes what is called actually positive. So we have inner positive and outer negative. This is what is called a depolarized membrane at this point. So the charge has been changed. This is called depolarization. Original charge, outer side we have positive, inner side negative. I'll give more information under the nervous system, conduction of impulses. Let's see only a few words to understand the fact. Okay, now outer positive and inner negative charge under normal conditions. Once a stimulus is given at a particular point, the charge has been changed. Now we have outer, that's what we have negative charge, inner positive charge, and both the sides. Here also we have just actually, this is the negative charge, and outer, inner one we have the positive charge. This is called depolarization. Polarized membrane has outer positive, inner negative. Depolarized membrane has just inner positive and outer negative. This depolarization results in the generation of one potential, what is called action potential, that is responsible for the conduction of impulses. Now, what is the reason for actually this depolarization? This is because of two major ions, one sodium and another one potassium. Under normal conditions, we have more sodium ions outside and more potassium ions inside. Once a stimulus is given, what is happening? The sodium ions are moving in. This is called influx. This is called influx. And the potassium ions are moving out. Potassium ions are moving out. Somehow, not fully. And that is called efflux. Efflux. So, we have outer positive charge, inner negative charge in any membrane. The negativity is because of what we have normally, some organic proteins. The positive charge is because of sodium ions and potassium ions. Now what is happening once a stimulus is given? More and more sodium ions enter inside. As a result, what is happening? Along with potassium ions, we have the charge has been increased. Positive charge number has been increased. So the net result will be we have inner positive, outer negative. I am telling that one efflux of potassium ions occurs. This the mechanism is different. Let's assume just only a few ions move out, but somehow more ions of potassium present inside. As we have more sodium and potassium ions in the cytoplasm, the net charge will be positive. That's the reason why we have the depolarization. So depolarization is because of the movement of ions, both sodium and potassium ions, by means of a pumping mechanism. Sodium potassium exchange pump we can see later. Now, so what do you mean by that one? So why is it called myogenic heart? The cardiomyocytes can produce spontaneous rhythmic depolarization that initiate the contractions. Now, what are the components present in the origin and conduction of heartbeat? Origin of heartbeat occurs in a tiny node located on the inner wall of the right atrium. Located on the inner wall of the right atrium. So I mentioned about what we have, the cardiocytes or cardiomyocytes. They can initiate the contractions. These cardiomyocytes, as they generate faster rhythm, they are called what is known as the pacemaker cells. The cardiomyocytes are called pacemaker cells. Pacemaker, because they generate what is called impulses, hence called pacemaker cells. So the cardiomyocytes that initiate faster rhythm are called pacemaker cells. These pacemaker cells are located in a tiny node, a small node, located on the inner wall of the right atrium, and that is called sinoatrial node or SA node. This is the place of origin of what is called electrical impulses. Why is it called as sinoatrial node? Now in frog, there is a structure what is called sinus venosus. We have studied in 10th standard. The sinus venosus opens into the right atrium in frog. Not in human beings, sinus venosus is absent. Now this node is present at the junction where the sinus venosus opens in frog. Hence it is called sinoatrial node. As it is located at the junction of the sinus venosus opening and the atrium, it is called sinoatrial node. So the cells are present, the pacemaker cells are the cells which can produce faster rhythm. They are located in a tiny node, swelling, located on the inner wall of the right atrium, modified what is called actually the cardiac muscle cells only. And these cells are called pacemaker cells. As this node contain the pacemaker cells and generate impulses, the SA node is called as a pacemaker, or what we call SA node, sinoatrial node. Now, what is the meaning of pacemaker? A place of generation of electrical impulses. Now, for example, in the case of two-wheeler, we have a battery, car battery, the one which generates impulses. That's called pace setter. Now, this is called pacemaker, the place of generation of electrical impulses. So a pacemaker is present having the pacemaker cells located in the inner wall of the right atrium. Now the impulses generated by this pacemaker are spreading in all directions but cannot pass across actually atria into ventricles because there is a pad of tissue. That pad of tissue present at the junction of the atrium and ventricles prevent the conduction of impulses from atria into the ventricles. So we have the impulses are generated and spreading to the left atrium and also to another node located towards what is called the right side of the left atrium. Sorry, towards what we have the left side of the right atrium. Now this is what's the right atrium. This is the left side of the right atrium. It is located just near what we have the left side of the right atrium. As it is present between the atrium and ventricle, this is called atrioventricular node. This node is called atrioventricular node. This node is called atrioventricular node. A node of tissue present towards what we have the left side of the right atrium. Now from this node, actually the impulses which are generated by the SN node are picked by what we have, that is this SN node. Sorry, the AV node, where it is in a pass condition. I mentioned here the impulses pass 0.16, so without moving, pass condition, know the meaning for that one. There is no conduction at the atrioventricular node. Okay, it remains there for a while. That is 0.1 second. That condition is called the pass condition. There is no movement of the electric impulses. From this node, there is the bundle of tissue arises. That is called atrioventricular bundle. That atrioventricular bundle, this is the atrioventricular bundle, connects the atria with the ventricles. I mentioned there is no conduction of impulses directly from the atria to the ventricles because of the presence of a pad of tissue present at what we call the openings of the atria and ventricle. That's atrioventricular aperture. There is a pad of tissue that prevents the spreading of impulses directly from the atrial wall to the ventricular wall. That's why we have a conducting system. So the conducting system consists of what we have atrioventricular node, where the impulses are being stayed for a while, about 0.1 second, that condition is the pass condition. Then there is a bundle of tissue. The tissue is called atrioventricular tissue, connecting what we have just actually the atria and the ventricles. Now the atrioventricular, that is bundle, connects the atria to the ventricles. Now the bundle, atrioventricular bundle, divides into two, that is what's called cardiac muscle branches, fiber branches. These branches are called bundle of His. These two branches are called bundle of His, after the name of the person His, a British doctor. So this is what's called the bundle of His, which runs down through the interventricular septum. Now this is the interventricular septum. Interventricular septum. So the bundle of His is passing downwards through the interventricular system or septum, I mean mistake, interventricular septum, and after traversing a short distance, it divides into many branches. These branches spread into the ventricles, connected to each and every muscle fiber. These branches arising from, that is what is called the bundle of His, are called the Purkinje fibers. So these fibers normally, after carrying the impulses reaching the cardiac cells, that is cardiocytes in the ventricles, they just produce depolarization in the cardiac cells. That results in what is called the excitation to produce what's called the contractions. So the Purkinje fibers depolarize the contractile cells of both ventricles. Depolarization I mentioned already. The generation of, so what is called actually action potential, you must know that one. The generation of electrical impulses by depolarization is called action potential. The mechanism by which the impulses are conducted is by action potential. That is, the nerve fiber of the membrane from resting potential is converted to action potential. What is action potential? Generation of electrical impulses by depolarization process. What is depolarization? The original outer positive charge becomes negative, in the negative charge becomes positive. That generates action potential. Now normally these are the sequence of electrical conduction of the heart. Number one, the synovial node, the pacemaker, generates impulses. I mentioned about the components, SN node, AV node, that is what is called atrioventricular bundle, then bundle of His, we have the Purkinje fibers. SN node is a place of origin. The remaining fibers are the conducting system. That is what we have. That is AV node. Then we have atrioventricular, that's the bundle. Then bundle of his and Purkinje fibers, they form the conducting system. Because there is no direct conduction of impulses from the atria to the ventricles due to the presence of some pad of tissue present at the junction of the atrium and ventricle. Now the second, even I mentioned the impulses pass 0.1 second without moving at the atrioventricular node for a while, about 0.1 second. Then the atrioventricular node, actually the atrioventricular bundle arising from what is called this node, just normally connects the atria with the ventricles. Then we have the bundle of his, the two branches arising from the atrioventricular bundle, just conducts the impulses through the interventricular septum. They are not passing through the wall of the ventricle, they pass through only the septal wall, the septum present in between the two ventricles. Now, which ultimately divides into branches. These branches normally depolarize what we have, the cardiac cells of both the ventricles, that results in the contraction. So the spontaneous rhythmic, what is called depolarization, that initiate contractions. And that is what's happening, hence the heart is called myogenic. It is an inherent property of the heart muscle to generate impulses. Inherent property means right from the permanent one. That's why it's called as myogenic heart. Okay. Now, normally you know that one. There is an excitation. Normally the cardiac muscle cells produce excitation. How? Through depolarization in their membrane, I mentioned above. So, the cardiac muscle fibers produce excitation through depolarization in their membranes. To begin with, the depolarization is slow. That is resulting in, because of what is the reason for depolarization? Because of influx of sodium ions and reduction in efflux of potassium ions. So more and more sodium ions are entering in, and we have potassium ions. Reduction in efflux, this is being prevented. Reduction in efflux, now movement of potassium ions out of the cell. So we have more sodium ions, potassium ions inside, that gives a net positive charge, and that is called depolarization. So minimum potential is needed to cause the depolarization. The depolarization results in what we have actually the generation of action potential. What is the action potential? The generation of electrical impulses through, that is, depolarization process. That is what is called actually depolarization. So minimum energy or minimum potential is needed for what we have the depolarization process. The depolarization results in the generation of action potential. This is because of influx of sodium ions, there is movement of sodium ions, reduction in efflux of potassium ions. Now the potassium ion is not moving, even it is moving only at a slow rate. So both are positively charged ions. You know that one, they're cathode, they're moving towards also the negative electrodes. And so that the net result is positive charge. Now, the regaining what is called once again outer positive inner negative is called repolarization. A polarized membrane is having outer positive and inner negative. During depolarization, we have outer negative, inner positive. We have to return back to the original condition, that is called repolarization. Once again, we have the membrane outer positive, inner negative. How this occurs? So the repolarization occurs because of the efflux of potassium ions as well as sodium ions. In the book it is given only potassium ions. When the potassium ions are moving out, this is called efflux. So the positive charge number decreases. The positive charge number decreases. When the positive charge number decreases, we have negatively charged organic protein. Its concentration is more when compared to the potassium ions. Now the net result is what is called the negative charge. I mentioned what a minimum potential is needed. What for? To activate a channel. What is the name of the channel? Voltage gated calcium channel. Voltage gated calcium channel. So minimum just actually potential is needed to activate voltage gated what is called calcium channels. Now the channel is opening according to the net voltage. That's the electric current in that one. That is why it's called voltage gated calcium channels. Because this once the channel is open, the calcium ions enter and increases what is called the depolarization process, or it results in rapid depolarization, resulting in what's called action potential. What is the action potential? In short, the generation of electrical impulses by depolarization. So calcium channels, once open, they stimulate what's called rapid depolarization that results in action potential. So we have minimum energy that is needed to stimulate or activate, that is what is called voltage gated. So there are gates, there's the openings, they're called as the gates. They open or close according to the number of what is called the electrically charged ions. That's why it's called as voltage gated channels. We'll talk about more and more under the number system and discuss more. Anyway, the calcium ion channel is activated, which results in active depolarization or rapid depolarization, leading to the action potential. Now, once again, the membrane is returning back to its original condition, that's called repolarized. So the membrane becomes slowly repolarizes. How? Due to the efflux of potassium ions. When potassium ions are moving out, ultimately what we have, the negative charge inside increases. So that we have once again inside negative charge, outer positive charge. So these are all the events you have to understand what is actually depolarization, that is what is repolarization, what is a polarized membrane. All the membranes have actually charges outside and inside. Outside we have positive, in and negative charges. Remember that one. So anyway, now the excitation resulted because of the depolarization. That ultimately results in what we call the contractions. And that contraction is initiated by the cells found in what we have actually is cardiomyocytes. Then membrane become what is called depolarized. That results in action potential that leads to the conduction of impulses. The membrane is returning back to its original condition because of the efflux of potassium ions. That is movement of potassium ions outside. That's called efflux. Movement of sodium ions inside is called influx. So during depolarization, influx of sodium ions occur, and during what is called repolarization, efflux of potassium ions occurs, so that the net negative charge created by some organic protein is more than the positive charge. That's why the membrane shows inner negative charge. So anyway, now we have the events about depolarization. So you have to understand that one. Now the excitation causes what we call depolarization. The depolarization initiates the contraction of what is called the muscles of the heart, leading to rapid contraction and relaxation. Now, the pacemaker cells are formed in the node, SA node, and that one initiate what we have or generate the impulses through depolarization. We'll talk about depolarization, repolarization. What do you mean by voltage gated channels, either for sodium or for potassium or for calcium. So calcium ions are responsible for the transmission of impulses from one neuron to another neuron. We'll discuss. So with the diagram, we explained about what we call the origin and conduction of heart. I'm writing the same one as points here. So heart in human is myogenic. Why? Because the cardiomyocytes, the cells that make the heart, can produce spontaneous rhythmic depolarization that initiate contractions. That is called rhythmicity, beating. Now the cardiac cells with the faster rhythm are called pacemaker cells. Pacemaker cells, because they create faster rhythm, hence called pacemaker cells. Why are they called pacemaker cells? Since they determine the contraction rate of entire heart, the rate of heartbeat, the contraction rate in turn results in heartbeat. So pacemaker cells, since they determine the contraction rate of entire heart, they are called as the pacemaker cells. Where are these pacemaker cells located? I mentioned these pacemaker cells are located in the sinoatrial node, otherwise called the pacemaker, as it generates impulses. Now another node I mentioned on the left side of the right atrium is a node called auriculoventricular node. It picks up the impulses generated by the SA node and conducts to the ventricles. Now, two special cardiac muscle fibers originate from the AV node and are called bundle of His. Before that, they are called atrioventricular bundle, and which runs down into the interventricular septum, and these branch into fibers in the ventricles, and these branches are called Purkinje fibers. As already described, just the continuation of the origin and conduction of heartbeat. Now I mentioned about the bundle of His branch into fibers. These fibers actually spread into the ventricles, and these fibers are called Purkinje fibers. Normally, I mentioned the pacemakers produce excitation. How? Through the depolarization of their membrane. The early depolarization is slow. This is actually the depolarization is because of sodium influx and reduction in potassium efflux. So that we have net charge inside is positive, so we have depolarization. Now, minimum potential is required to activate one channel, what is called voltage gated calcium channels. Because calcium channels activate the actually they cause rapid, that is depolarization, which results in action potential. I mentioned already action potential generation of electrical impulses by depolarization. For that, we need the help of what is called the calcium channels. They are voltage gated channels. Gate means the openings present on the surface of the membrane. They open according to the charges, the number of charges, number of positive charges, number of negative charges, the electrical charges, hence called voltage gated channels. They open according to the voltage. Okay, they cause rapid depolarization which results in action potential. Now the membrane is gradually, the membrane of the cardiomyocytes returning to its original polarized condition slowly because of what is called potassium efflux. When potassium is moving out, we have in the cytoplasm more and more negative charges that results in repolarization. In repolarized condition, nothing but the original condition having outer positive charge and inner negative charge. That's all about the origin and conduction of heartbeat. Now a few words about heartbeat, what is studied in 10th standard. What is heartbeat? Rhythmic expansion and contraction of the heart is called heartbeat. Expansion and contraction. Now the contraction phase of the heart, the contraction stage of the heart is called systole. And similarly, the relaxation or expansion of the heart is called diastole. In an adult, the heart normally beats 70 to 72 times per minute. But the rate of heartbeat is higher in the case of newborn babies. Even in the case of developing embryo, it is about 120 to 160. 120 to 160. But in average, adult peak of 70 to 72 times per minute. So during each cardiac cycle, two sounds are produced, and they can be heard through an instrument what is called stethoscope. Examination of the chest, that is called stethoscope. Now the first heart sound is called, normally you see that one, lub. The first heart sound is called lub. So the heart sounds are normally caused because of the closure of the two different types of walls. Now the first sound, lub, is associated with the closure of atrioventricular walls, namely the bicuspid and tricuspid wall. So it is of longer duration, but it is not sharp enough. Now the second sound, dub, it is associated with the closure of another walls, that is called semilunar walls, during the contraction of the ventricles. And now this lub is caused during the relaxation of the ventricles, and the dub is caused during the contraction of the ventricles. And at times what we have, the closure of the semilunar walls. Closure of the semilunar walls responsible for the production of dub. When the semilunar wall closes, so it closes only during, that is what's called ventricular diastole. And when does the love normally just cause? Normally, the love is caused during, just I mentioned, the closure of bicuspid and tricuspid valves. These valves are closed during ventricular systole. So during ventricular systole, love is caused. During ventricular diastole, this love is caused. Okay, anyway, closure of the semilunar valves, tricuspid and bicuspid valves responsible for what we have the production of the heart sounds. Now, we have irregular heartbeat condition called arrhythmia. Irregular heartbeat condition is called arrhythmia. That is either decrease in rate of heartbeat or increase in rate of heartbeat is called arrhythmia, irregular heartbeat rate. So an increased heart rate is called tachycardia. Increased rate. I mentioned already either decrease or increased heartbeat rate is an example for irregular heartbeat rate. That is otherwise called arrhythmia. An increased heart rate is called tachycardia, and the decreased heart rate is called bradycardia. Bradycardia. So tachycardia and bradycardia together we have arrhythmia, irregular heartbeat, increased rate or decreased rate. Accordingly, we have the name tachycardia and bradycardia. Now, with this, I conclude what we have the heartbeat and the structure, origin, and conduction of heartbeat. We will proceed further in the next class.